Why stress feels different now. If you feel like stress today is different than it used to be, you're not imagining it. Many people describe modern stress as constant, internal, and harder to escape. Even when life looks relatively stable on the outside, it doesn't always feel like panic or pressure. Often it shows up as mental heaviness, low-level tension, irritability, or exhaustion that never fully goes away. This isn't about people being weaker or less capable. It's about the conditions our nervous systems are operating in. Stress today doesn't come from isolated events. It comes from ongoing demands on attention, decision-making, and anticipation that rarely shut off. And stay with me. Because the biggest reason modern stress feels different isn't emotional or about willpower. It's about how much your brain is being asked to carry all the time. Does stress feel more constant for you now than it used to, even when nothing specific is going wrong? How stress traditionally worked. Historically, stress was designed to be short-term and situational. A clear threat appeared, the body responded, and once the threat passed, the system returned to baseline. Stress had a beginning and an end. The stress response increased heart rate, sharpened focus, and mobilized energy. When the situation resolved, those systems shut back down. Recovery happened naturally because there was closure. Modern stress rarely works this way. Instead of responding to a single event, the nervous system responds to ongoing pressure. There's no clear moment when stress ends, which means the body stays engaged far longer than it was designed to. From a biological standpoint, the stress response doesn't differentiate between physical danger and psychological demand. It only registers load. When demands don't resolve, the system doesn't either. Can you think of a time when stress had a clear beginning and end, and how that felt different from stress now? The shift from external threats to internal load. One of the biggest changes in modern stress is where it lives. Stress used to come from the environment. Now it lives largely in the mind. Modern stress is driven by internal load, things you're tracking, remembering, planning, anticipating, and monitoring. Unanswered messages, tasks you can't forget, decisions you haven't made yet, conversations you replay, futures you keep rehearsing. This type of stress doesn't look dramatic, but biologically, it still requires energy. The brain stays engaged even during quiet moments. There's no clear off switch. This is where cognitive load comes in. Cognitive load refers to how much information your brain is actively holding and processing at once. When that load stays high, stress stays active, even without obvious stressors. What takes up the most mental space for you right now? Unfinished tasks, future planning, or things you're trying not to forget? Why cognitive load keeps stress active. The brain has a limited capacity for active processing. Working memory can only hold so much at one time. When it's overloaded, the system becomes strained. Modern life constantly fills that capacity. Notifications, schedules, expectations, choices, and background monitoring all compete for attention. Even low-level mental effort adds up. From the body's perspective, continuous mental processing equals continuous demand. The nervous system stays slightly activated, ready to respond. Over time, that activation becomes the baseline. This is why modern stress often feels like constant tension instead of intense spikes. The body isn't reacting to danger. It's responding to load that never resolves. Does stress show up for you more as mental heaviness or constant tension rather than sharp anxiety? Anticipation as a stressor. Another defining feature of modern stress is anticipation. Stress is no longer just about what's happening, it's about what might happen. Planning, worrying, forecasting, and tracking future outcomes activate the same stress pathways as immediate threats. The nervous system doesn't distinguish between real danger and mentally rehearsed scenarios. This is why stress can feel active even when you're sitting still. The mind is working and the body follows. Anticipatory stress is powerful because it rarely resolves. There's always another possibility to manage, another outcome to prepare for, another scenario to consider. How much of your stress comes from things that haven't actually happened yet? Why modern stress feels internal and inescapable. Because modern stress is driven by internal processes, it often feels personal. People assume stress means they're doing something wrong or failing to handle life properly. But internalized stress is harder to escape because it travels with you. There's no physical boundary between on and off. Quiet moments don't automatically shut it down. This creates the feeling that stress is coming from inside you rather than from your circumstances. That misinterpretation adds another layer of pressure, self-blame. Understanding that modern stress is driven by load, not weakness, is a critical shift. It changes the question from, "What's wrong with me?" to, "What is my system responding to?" Have you ever blamed yourself for feeling stressed even when your life looks fine on the outside? How modern stress affects the nervous system. Chronic low-level stress affects the nervous system differently than short bursts of stress. Instead of sharp activation followed by recovery, the system stays partially engaged for long periods. Over time, this shows up as symptoms that don't look like classic stress: mental fog, irritability, low energy, and reduced tolerance for small challenges. This isn't adrenaline-driven stress. It's depletion-driven stress. The body isn't preparing for action, it's managing sustained demand without resolution. That's why modern stress often feels more like exhaustion than urgency. When stress shows up for you, does it look more like exhaustion and irritability than panic or pressure? Why traditional stress advice falls short. Most stress advice assumes stress is episodic. It focuses on coping with moments of pressure rather than reducing background load. Many strategies add steps, tracking, or mental effort, which can unintentionally increase cognitive load. Instead of relieving stress, they give the brain more to manage. This is why people often feel like they're doing everything right, but still feel overwhelmed. The advice doesn't match the mechanism driving the stress. When stress comes from continuous internal demand, adding more techniques doesn't solve the problem. Have you tried stress advice that sounded helpful but didn't actually change how you felt day to day? What science shows actually helps. Research consistently points toward reduction, not optimization. Fewer inputs, fewer decisions, more predictability. Lowering cognitive load means simplifying where possible, reducing unnecessary monitoring, and creating stability in daily patterns. The nervous system responds to clarity and consistency. This isn't about eliminating stress completely. It's about allowing stress responses to complete instead of staying open-ended. When background load decreases, the nervous system gradually downshifts and stress stops feeling constant. What would reduce your mental load the most right now? Fewer decisions, fewer inputs, or more predictability. Reframing modern stress. Modern stress feels different because it is different. It's driven by continuous mental demand, not isolated threats. Feeling stressed doesn't mean you're failing. It means your system is responding to sustained load. Understanding how modern stress works removes self-blame and creates space for change, not through willpower, but through addressing what your nervous system is actually responding to. After watching this, what's one way you're rethinking why stress feels the way it does for you? If this perspective was useful, like this video and subscribe for more grounded, science-based healthy habits content,